Jimm, welcome to the stage. Thank you for being here, especially at, as we were talking earlier, ridiculous o'clock because he is in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, good morning, and
Good morning.
thanks so much for inviting me to do this little talk. Yeah, and it is ridiculously early in the morning. Like I said when we were talking earlier, it just reminds me of getting up to get to the airport really early because before COVID, I used to travel like almost every week. I was on an airplane. Anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I'm fresh, I'm alive, and I'm ready to get into this.
I'm so
So.
grateful. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, even though it's so early in the morning. We appreciate you. And you sound very alive, very alert. Did you have any essential oil diffusing before or right now?
I have 24/7 essential oils going on. I teach a lot of techniques and a lot of systems, and I don't do any of them, mostly because I'm doing them all the time anyway, which is how I've developed systems based on my own lifestyle and how I do these things. But yeah, you want me to give everyone a kind of a brief history on myself just so they know that where I came from and what I'm doing?
Sure, absolutely. And then I will
Yeah.
go into my favorite essential oils and you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I was a musician. I was a touring musician, and when I got off the road, I got into more or less the family business. I'm Italian from Boston, so you're either mafia or a hairdresser. And so I went with the hairdresser deal, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I was studying nutrition and herbs right around that same time and ended up opening up a salon that was based on holistic health. And this was way before anybody was doing this. So it was just pioneering something is always a little difficult. And
Yeah,
then I
you
found out
had
about
in,
it.
I'm sorry, I just have to
Yeah.
interrupt. I was watching on your YouTube how in 2001, there were no blackberry bushes in Seattle, right? And you actually make an essential oil out of blackberry and you had to import it from where?
Columbia. What it is that there's blackberry bushes everywhere. Okay. I'm pretty much almost downtown, right next to the Space Needle in Seattle, if you understand Seattle at all. And even right outside my window, there are just tons of blackberry bushes. So when I was putting it together, a skincare thing, so that's the process that I ended up in. How I ended up in Seattle after getting into essential oils and nutrition and herbs and studying beauty. I was teaching in the aesthetic industry, skincare industry, essential oils. And then I met a woman in Seattle who was doing the skincare that I would tell my students about, but nobody was doing it. And so I came out here to do that. And blackberry seed oil was one of the things I wanted to use. And I figured, well, there's blackberries all over the place here. I should be easily find organic blackberry seed oil. But nobody was doing it. And the thing is that they were all taking the blackberries and using it in jams. So they were keeping, I guess, is it jams to keep the seeds? One of them keeps the seeds. So they weren't using the seeds. So anyway, yeah, I had to order it in from Colombia, South America. Now it's actually available.
Yeah,
But
so
that's,
basically what he's saying is I was doing this before it was trending, which is great.
exactly.
And if you're new, we are talking about essential oils. We're going to talk about how it's a secret weapon for entrepreneurs. And then we'll transition into how mindfulness intersects with this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the side of the story where it'll be topical for where we're going to be going today. And so in all of that, at the same time, Deepak Chopra was pretty new at the time. And so I got into the self-help thing at the same time. And then I started reading about quantum physics. And I know you posted a quote or something from Joe Dispenza, right? And so Joe Dispenza, he brings up a lot of the quantum stuff. So the quantum aspect of things, which is, if anyone that doesn't understand that, you're going to have to look it up because it's way too much to talk about right now. But it's the way I like to explain it. It's the other side of the wall. And when I got into essential oils and started reading about self-help and quantum physics, I realized that essential oils are really on that cusp of quantum and physical. And so I developed all of my systems and all of my theories and all of my education around the way essential oils are this elusive thing, which is why it's so confusing for a lot of people to understand. There's a lot of bad information, but even the bad information is accurate. So it's a weird thing.
Oh, wait a
It's
minute.
very
Wait a
quantum.
minute. You got to break that down a little bit. First of all, what are some of the myths or misconceptions about essential oils? And then you mentioned some of it is true. So I'm interested in knowing about that.
Yeah, it's the conversation is just everything is a topic, okay? And so with self-help and quantum physics, you have to see that essential oils do not behave like drugs. So my main thing that I teach all of my students, and I always say this right up front, essential oils are not drugs. So when we think of a headache, someone will say that it's in essential oils. They go, oh, use peppermint. Peppermint doesn't
Mm.
work for a headache. Peppermint works for a person with a peppermint headache, but for me, it doesn't work. Peppermint, when I
Wow.
have a headache, doesn't work. And so you don't decide on an oil for the symptom. You choose an oil for the person with the symptom. And this is where it's going to get into the topic that we're talking about, is that when I work with either one person or a group, I let them know that the oils are theirs. Once I teach them how to use them, then it's their own. They have to create it and make it work for who they are and what symptoms they have. And it's about emotion and memory. And there's just so many areas that you have to pay attention to, which is why it gets confusing. So emotion and memory I want to get into, because the olfactory system is one of the main things that I focus on, especially when, yeah.
So you and I are familiar with essential oils. Let's see what the audience, what their experience is. Have
Yeah.
you experimented with essential oils? Give us a heart if you have experimented ever with essential oils, because maybe the audience doesn't even know what essential oils are. And I know that you teach like 3 components of what essential oils do. I'm probably explaining this poorly. You'll explain it better. But I think maybe it's important to just lay some groundwork there, because it looks like not everybody, there's some, but not everybody has experimented with essential oils.
Let me give a quick overview of essential oils. So they're an extract from plants, and they can come from any part of the plant: the seed, the wood, the bark, leaves, all different parts. And each plant can have a different section where the oil comes from. The oil is the plant's natural protection. So wherever the environment that the plant grows, it produces compounds that protect it either from herbivores or from the sun, the environment, whatever. And that composition of compounds, when it's extracted, is what we call essential oil. So there's a lot more to that, but I'm going to just leave it. It's an extract from a plant. And so everyone's doing essential oils. If you put basil or peppermint or anything, any kind of herb when you're using cooking, that's where the essential oil comes from. The flavors and the aroma especially is the essential oil. And over the years, essential oils have been used, and they say it's thousands of years old. It really isn't. It's really early, 1900s, is when the term aromatherapy was coined, and how we use essential oils developed from the 1900s. And it was first developed as a medical practice. Essential oils behave like medicine. And so
I just want you to highlight that again. Essential oils behave like medicine. So
medicine. Let me give you an example of that, because I told you how they go from this quantum aspect to very physical. So in my work, I'm using them in skincare. So there's a little bit of emotion, and that's a bit more elusive, but that's very scientific, understanding how the sense of smell works. And then you have this sort of energetic. People use it for chakras and energetic medicine. That's more of a homeopathic, like, if people know what homeopathy is, but more of an energetic quantum aspect. But then, because I worked at Bastyr University, which is a naturopathic doctor university, I actually worked with doctors who were doing this in IVs, and they were using it as a very powerful
in IVs.
medicine.
Which particular oil?
Oh, it was a lot of them. And I tell people that I can cure every cancer out there with essential oils, according to the scientific data. But according to the scientific data and according to the reality of who we are as biological beings, I would have to take the tumor cells out of the body, put them in a petri dish, and then put the essential oil in there to get to it. And so it's not as simple as finding a study, and the study says that the oil will do this specific thing. You have to really understand, once you use the oil in the human being, how that's going to behave. So I've seen the extreme of how essential oils can work, from this very elusive energetic way to a very powerful medicine used in medical situations, and which is how it got started. Like I said, in the 1900s, right through up to the 70s, it was a medicine. So
I just want to take a moment to digest this a little bit, Jimm, because you're saying a lot. And if you haven't, so if you're just, because I see there's a few people just tuning in, we are with essential oil expert, obviously, Jimm Harrison, who is really dropping some nuggets. I think the fact that essential oils can be used in the hospital in IVs is saying a lot about how we need to reshape and even shift our mindset around our environment, because this is all nature. Like, this is nature's drug. This is nature's cure, right? So I think it's important to frame it in a way where the purpose of this conversation is for everyone to be able to walk away learning a little bit more about how essential oils, but even beyond the essential oils, how your space, how your environment, how your atmosphere can really determine your success. Because if I'm surrounded by trash and garbage and I'm inhaling that all the time, which by the way can be toxic people, that's another conversation altogether, then it can mess with my nervous system. It can mess with my cognition. I won't be as productive at work. And that's why we're having this very important conversation before we go on. So we'll continue, but I did have to say that because I think it's important that everybody understand this is why it's your secret weapon, because you can totally change how you react and respond to the world. So go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. So let me bring this into where the topic that you've presented here, because there's so much to essential oils that I could go on for hours. My classes are 8 hours a day, and of 3 days a week is only one small part. So anyway, a lot of information. Let me get to the olfactory system, because I think that's key for what we're going to be talking about, and also the main way I'm using essential oils now. So I've given you this extreme on the behavior of essential oils and what you can expect from them and how you can use them depending on who you are. If you're a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, you can use them in that medical system. If you're more of an energetic healer, you can use them in that energetic way. And then there's all this in between. I'm doing skincare and I'm incorporating everything, energy and medicine and just everything when I work. So let's look at the olfactory system, because the olfactory system is the thing that makes the essential oils the most confusing. The olfactory system, when you smell something, it triggers a response through the limbic system of your brain. It's a very primitive part of your brain where emotions and memory are stored. This is a biological function, which is why when you smell something, it can trigger like a little streaming video in your head, right? You get this powerful memory.
Does that happen to you? If you're in the audience right now and you can smell something and it'll trigger a memory, give us a heart. Because I would believe that nobody can say that has not been the case. Everybody has had that experience where they've smelled something. It reminds them of grandma, or it reminds them of where, like, childhood memories or something like that.
You can't ignore it. It's biology. And it doesn't process through the intellectual centers. So it's very immediate. And its main purpose is protection. So it's either about attraction or aversion. Okay. And so our relationships are like this. You should smell your partner, and this is part of the attraction. And I could get into reproduction and all that stuff too, on how the olfactory system works, but it's about attraction, and beauty is actually part of that. So smelling is attraction. Now, if you love a certain food, that's an attraction. Now, if there's danger, and this is why when you walk into your room and you smell gas, immediately you go into fight or flight, because the response is to protect you. So you've recognized that's odor. It's that odor is triggered in your brain through memory and emotion to be something dangerous. And that's the memory, but the emotion puts you into fight or flight so that you immediately respond to that fragrance. This is happening to us all day long, constantly. So if you ever walk into a room or a space and you feel uncomfortable and you're not really sure why, it could be the odor of the room. So now let's bring that to essential oils, because when you smell an oil, you're also smelling it from what your memory is. So if you're allergic to lavender, and you know you're allergic to lavender, you're going to say, I'm allergic to lavender, but in the lavender oil, none of the pollens are in there. So you're not really allergic to the essential oil. But because the memory emotion association is there, the lavender essential oil can trigger the same allergic response in the body.
That is powerful. This memory emotion connection and how it can trigger a response from your body just based off of what your brain is interpreting or remembering what was associated with that. And then we're coming up on time. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask their questions. Now's the time to raise your hand. But I wanted to ask what is the one thing that you think you have seen be very powerful? Like, how is essential oil an ally for entrepreneurs, and what specifically do you think we should be focusing on? I know you said that essential oils are very specific, and just because you have a peppermint doesn't mean that it's going to cure your particular headache, because
Right.
all in the individuals. But what is it that, like, kind of general information you can give to entrepreneurs to help them leverage essential
All
oils?
right. I'm gonna do this really quick because it's like short period of time. When I teach essential oils, I'll teach you what oils to use for symptoms, just to get you familiar with the oils, because they do work symptomatically.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the dynamics of the olfactory system and emotions and all of these other factors, it can change how it works. So first of all, you have to understand what's the cause of the symptom. That's how you choose the right oil. I'd have to train you on that for 3 days, right? Just for you to get a little bit familiar. Now, to move in with what I'm talking about here with the olfactory system, because this is where I find the most power and where I help entrepreneurs and actually anybody, and I call it behavior modification. So if you find yourself unfocused, I know you did a thing on focus, the way you work, and you smell the oil. There's
Mm-hmm.
actually studies on how that works. And it's not necessarily specifically about what oils you're using, but it's about your memory emotion relationship with that,
That is
as much as,
crazy.
yeah, as much as it is the oils themselves. And like I could take lavender, and this has been studied before. Lavender is known as a calming oil, but if I introduce it to you, you've never smelled it before, and I tell you it's a stimulant, you're going to be stimulated.
You know what?
That's
This
and
actually
that's called verbal.
answers
That's
verbal. What
called
is it?
verbal cues.
Okay,
Verbal
yeah.
cues.
So
Yep.
this actually answers probably Nadia. Is she in here? Yes. Okay. So Nadia and I were talking about, actually, I think it was ashwagandha, so maybe not apples to apples,
Hmm.
but how actually that can keep her awake. And I said, for me, it makes me rest. And this is
Hmm.
what the tea packet says. So it just goes to show you that we're not monoliths, and that we all are individuals. And
Yeah. And our brains, our mental state functions and can totally change our physical body.
mhm,
And so if you read that it puts you to sleep, that's what's going to happen for you if you've never had the experience
that's
before. But
crazy.
other people may come into it with a different perspective
Hmm.
and be totally it's the mind. This is Joe Dispenza, right?
Hmm.
And Deepak Chopra. That's why I get into self-help. But let me get into the quick behavior modification. Okay, so focus or sleep. One of the ways that I work with people is I will have them meditate or get into a very calm, rested state. And that's when they introduce, if I'm not doing the therapy, they have it themselves. They introduce a new oil, or I like blends better, in that space. So what they're doing is they're creating an emotion and a memory based on the odor, but in that comforting meditative state. So if they're at work and if they did it for stress, for example, and they're at work and they're starting to get all stressed out, they pull out the bottle and they smell it, and it will trigger that emotional state that they were in meditation, which is going to be a relaxed state. Plus, they have the verbal cues and all these different layers. And this is how I layer my therapy. And the three things that I talk about with essential oils is an olfactory response, there's a very physical response, and then there's a metaphysical response or energetic. And so I incorporate all of those into this behavior modification technique that I use.
Beautiful.
And when you start working with essential oils and you understand how that works, that's where the power is. The essential oils, if you look at them in a study and you can isolate things, you can find that the essential oils have very specific symptomatic purposes or properties. But once you bring the human body into it, and this is why what I call it is nature treating nature. You have to understand that these things come from nature, and then understand that we are nature. And we have to understand all the complications and the complexity that goes along with that.
So
So
I
behavior modification is how I work with entrepreneurs to help adjust all those weird things that we have to deal with as living beings.
My takeaway from this is to know yourself. This is all a part of self-awareness, you all.
Always.
It comes down to paying attention, also interacting with your environment, with nature, and experimenting, and not to be and try to be a little bit compassionate towards yourself, because maybe you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody who, like, maybe there's a memory emotion connection that you're not aware of. And so if somebody says, oh, this peppermint totally cures my headache, maybe just understanding that's not the case for you. And to understand that, recognize that, appreciate that, and move on to something that does work, but understand that you as an individual holistically have the obligation to yourself to find out and figure out what works for you. David, thank you for coming up. Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah, you can take your time. I was just playing with the mute button. Yeah, what is a good essential oil to wake up with? And is there a device that will just diffuse it automatically before you wake up? So when you wake up, it's just there?
Diffusers can be set on a timer, and if the diffuser itself can't be set on a timer, you can buy it one of those wall timers that will, you set it to wake you up almost like an alarm. And then this would really be dependent on what feels right to you. And it tends to be the spices or things like the mint. Peppermint is very common for alertness and waking up. But the way I see that is when you smell a spice, what does that feel like? Not necessarily the essential oil, but you smell those things and it's very alive. It just feels active. And so I call it the personality of the plant or the personality of the oil. And so it really depends on what feels alert to you. And this is going to be my takeaway for you guys, because I'm giving you information that's not really here. You can do this now. Just get oils that feel good to you or smell right to you, and then experiment with them. Does it make you feel alert? Does it slow you down? Does it relax you? Does it just, all of these different things? And this is what Treya was saying, self-awareness. Just really be aware of you and how you feel, because memory and emotion is going to trigger a lot of your feelings when you smell any oil.
I love that. David is going to experiment with some essential oils when he's giving his 7 at 7. He has a daily show. You can find out more about it. Click on his profile and then show up. Jimm, that would be even an hour earlier. So I don't think he'll be there. But for some of you that are on the West Coast, maybe you can do that.
It's a 4 a.m. thing, huh?
Oh, gosh. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yeah, there's so much to learn. And where this is just an introduction, I say play. Read what you can, read what other people are saying. And that's why at the beginning I said there's good information and there's bad information. But even the bad information can be useful, because it might put you on a path of discovery for what works for you.
Yes. So we have Ollie and David, and then we have got to end. But Ollie, go ahead.
Okay, hi Jimm.
Hey there.
Jimm, you have solved 50% of my problems so far.
Don't charge.
So I would like to build up on your lavender syndrome or whatever you call it. So see, somebody, not me, some random person is very allergic to lavender,
Mhm.
but that somebody's better half is obsessed with the same oils, lavender candles and shampoos and body
Yep.
washes. Do you have a oil so that I can block all that?
There's also a lot of synthetics out there that aren't essential oils. But synthetics, this is the confusing thing. People talk about you have to have pure, authentic
But then
essential oils.
you just said they trigger the same response. They don't even see. I believe
Yeah.
you.
So
You're
so
right.
there
I'm
you
an
don't.
example of that.
It's hard to know what you're actually allergic to when you're not really sure what the quality of the oil is. But your question was, what can you do? And you can, in a way, block. It's difficult. But if you were smelling, peppermint is very aggressive. And so it can, in a way, neutralize you smelling that odor, because it's really it's going to be the memory that's kicking in. There's none of the pollens are in there. You're not allergic to lavender, but the emotion memory is there. So yes, you are allergic to the lavender, because it's, again, nature treating nature.
All right. So we're at time. Ali, thank you for coming up. David, ask your question real quick, and then I will release you all into the wild to go experiment with essential oils and to check out jimmharrison.com. Go ahead, David. And I'm going to say, Jimm, this was an awesome conversation. If y'all have any questions, make sure that you connect with Jimm. He has a lot of cool stuff actually on his YouTube as well. And then check out Jimm Harrison, Jimm with 2 M's, because he had, I don't know, maybe our mothers spoke with each other, and you're Jimm with two M's and I'm Andrea with a T. But do check him out because he teaches so much and he knows, he's clearly passionate, so passionate about all of this. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you all for coming. Have a really beautiful, amazing day and keep it mindful. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.